The carriage came for her at the hour the storm broke. Marin Penhale, midwife at Trewithen Cove these 11 years, was salting fish at the back of her cottage when the wheels ground over the gravel. She knew the sound. She had heard it at births and at deaths and at the dragging up of bodies from the bay. She wiped her hands on her apron and went to the door before the maid had finished knocking. The girl on her step was a stranger, and not a stranger. Marin had seen her once in the village last Michaelmas. She had walked 3 steps behind a tall, fair-haired lady in mourning, Eleanor Ashford Hale, the Duke's twin, dead now 9 days. "Mrs. Penhale," the maid said. Her teeth were chattering, her bonnet was sodden through. "Please, he is dying." "Who is dying?" "His Grace." Rain ran off the slate and into Marin's collar, and she barely registered the cold. What she registered was the iron of the latch under her hand, and the calluses on her own knuckles where the skin had cracked from washing too many newborns in too cold water. "The physician," Marin began. "The physician has not come for 3 days. There is no one else. There is only me, and the infant, and him. I came on foot from the lodge. The carriage waits on the high road." Marin looked past her into the rain. The lamp at her own hearth was guttering. There was a stew on. She had promised to sit with old Anna Trewin at moonrise. She had a goat to milk at dawn. "Wait," she said. She went back inside for her bag. What she did not know yet was that her cottage would stand empty for 16 days, and that a hand inside Tremaine House was pouring a cup that meant to kill. She only knew she had said yes the way she always said yes. She stayed for what came next. The maid's name was Sarah Penrose. She told Marin this in the carriage. She did not stop talking. 3 nights, Sarah said. 3 nights, and into the 4th. He fell at the bottom of the stairs, ma'am. We found him on the landing outside the lady's room. That is, Lady Eleanor's room where the cradle is. He had bitten his tongue and there was foam at his lips. We thought it the falling sickness. The physician said the falling sickness. He said calm and dark. And the child? Lillian, ma'am, 3 days old. Wet nurse? Old Hannah Trezess from the Cove. She comes morning and night. She does not stay. Sarah's hands kept finding each other in her lap, and then losing each other again. Marin let her talk. The road climbed under them. The moor was bare and wet. The whitethorn knelt sideways out of the wind. She had never been to Tremaine House. Few in the village had. The Ashfords had ceased giving a tenant's supper 3 years back. Not since the old Duke died and his son had inherited at 26. Lady Eleanor's husband had drowned a year ago somewhere off the Lizard. Then Eleanor had taken her time about coming home to her brother and her time about her labour. Last week she had taken too long about both. Now there was a baby in the great chamber, and the great chamber's window had been shrouded for 9 days. 9 days for the sister, 3 for the child. The Duke a 4th night on the floor. Sarah said, "Captain Ashford has been sent for." Marin looked up. Captain Ashford. His Grace's half-brother. He was on leave at Plymouth. The steward wrote to him. When? The same day his Grace fell. The steward said it was right and proper. The steward said... Sarah stopped. The steward said, "Nothing, ma'am. It is not my place." The carriage struck a rut. The bag knocked against Marin's shin, and she caught it. Outside, the wind threw rain at the windows in a flat sheet. Marin watched the girl's hands knot and slacken. She thought, that one is afraid of something that is not the falling sickness. She let it stand. There would be time for it. She thought instead of her own house, the door she had latched behind her, the fire she had pulled apart with the tongs before she left. A midwife learned early not to leave a fire on a hearth when you did not know when you were coming back. She thought of the box on the mantel that held Thomas's wedding ring, and a curl of fair hair too small to belong to a man. She thought of the cliff path that took the boat down to the cove. The cliff path she had walked twice a day for the year she had been a wife and not yet a mother. The path she had walked once a day after she had been both. The path she had not walked at all in the year after. The lamp swung over the carriage door. The road tipped and climbed. "Mrs. Penhale," Sarah said, "there's a thing I must ask you." "Ask." Will you stay until the captain comes?" Marin watched the girl's face a moment before she answered. Sarah was perhaps 18. Her cheekbones were sharp under wet hair. She was holding her hands very still now. "How long has he been on the road?" 4 days, ma'am. Maybe 5. "Then he will be at Tremaine by the end of the week." "Yes. And you wish me to stay until then?" "I wish you to stay, ma'am. I do not know what else to wish." The road ahead bent down toward the coast. The lamps at the gatehouse of Tremaine showed dim and yellow through the rain. The wind brought up the sound of the sea, the sound of slate falling somewhere off a stable roof, and behind it, faint and not steady, the cry of a child. Marin set her bag on her knees. "I will stay until he can pay me to leave," she said, which she left to the road. The great chamber smelt of vomit and of laudanum and of a banked fire too long banked. Marin did not stop at the threshold. She set her bag on the floor where there was light from the casement and went to the man on the boards. He lay on his side near the cold hearth, shirt open, feet bare, a smear of blood at one temple where he had caught the andiron going down. His breathing was the kind Marin had been taught to fear, shallow, then 4 short together, then a stop long enough for her to cross the room and kneel. The cradle was 3 paces off by the bed. The child in it was screaming with the particular thin red rage of a newborn who had not been answered for an hour. Marin turned him onto his back, then onto his side again the other way. She loosened the band of his shirt at the neck. Her fingers went to his throat. The pulse was there. It was uneven. It was there. Sarah. Sarah was at the door with the lamp. "Bring me water, cold, a pail, and a cloth, and something to weigh on his shoulder. A book." "A book, ma'am?" "A weight, so he does not roll back." Then to the child. "Pick her up. Walk with her. Do not put her down until I tell you." "Yes, ma'am." Marin found his pulse again and counted it against her own. 40, 38, 40 again. She put her ear to his chest. The lungs were full. The heart was running and stopping like a horse that had gone too far. She knew the Duke by name only. She had known his sister by sight. She had not known the man on the floor was beautiful. He was. Even half dead under the lamp, with his lips split and a string of bile at his jaw. His bones were the bones of a face that men were painted with. She noted it the way she would have noted a heron in the marsh. It had no bearing. She wiped his mouth with the hem of his own shirt. "Your Grace, I am Marin Penhale. I am the midwife from Trewithen Cove. I am going to keep you on your side. You are going to breathe. Do you hear me?" He did not hear her. She did not stop talking. She talked to him while she put a cold cloth on his neck and another over his ankles. She talked while she held one hand on the joint of his shoulder, keeping him off his throat. She talked while Sarah brought the pail and lifted the child out of the cradle. The child, finding the warmth of a moving body, made a thin gulping sound and quieted. The fire had been out for hours. Marin sent Sarah for kindling and laid it herself, working from where she sat. The chimney drew at the 3rd try. The wind was high outside. The window rattled in its lead. Somewhere in the house a clock struck 8 and then 9. At 10 she changed the cloth at his neck. At 11 his eyes opened. He looked past her at the ceiling, with the kind of looking men did at the bottom of a long fall. "Eleanor," he said. "I am not Eleanor. I am Marin Penhale. Your Grace. Drink." She had a horn cup at his lip. He swallowed once. He coughed. He swallowed again. "Lillian. She is here. She is sleeping. Hannah came at 7 and fed her. Drink." He drank. His eyes came down off the ceiling and onto her face. The looking sharpened. The seeing started. "You," he said, and stopped. "Yes." "You stayed." It was the lowest plain line of the night. He shut his eyes on it. Marin set her hand flat to the top of his head, the way one would set a hand on a child's head, and held it there until the breath under her other hand evened. She held the pose for an hour. She had crossed a threshold and had no need yet to know it. 3 nights passed before the Duke could sit up unaided. In that time the house began to take its shape around Marin. She learned where the linen press was kept and which key worked which lock. She learned which servant could be sent for what and which could not be sent at all. 3 remained at Tremaine besides Sarah: a cook, a stableman, an old gardener. The rest had gone in the year of Eleanor's mourning and never been replaced. The steward, a man called Yelland, came down twice a day to ask after his master and went away again to write letters. Marin watched him write the letters and did not say anything to him at all. Hannah Trezisa came at 6 and at 6. She fed the child with the calm of a woman who had fed 5 of her own and lost 3. She did not stay. She had her own to mind. She left Lillian wrapped in the cradle by the hearth in the great chamber. Marin had moved the cradle there on the first night. She would not have 2 patients in 2 rooms when she had 1 pair of hands. On the second day, the Duke kept down beef tea. On the second night, he asked for his sister, and Marin said, "Your sister is buried. It was 9 days ago." She said it because she had learned at 23 that the kindest thing a sick person could be told was the truth, plainly, once, and not asked to hear it again. He turned his head to the wall. She let him be. On the 3rd morning, she opened the curtain a hand's breadth. A body that had been in the dark for 9 days needed first light at last. He watched her do it without comment. The dawn was grey. The sea below the house was rough and brown. "Have you eaten?" he said. "Yes." "You have not." "Sarah brought me bread at 4. I ate it." "Sit." She sat. She had not meant to. She had meant to go down for fresh water and bring it back. But he had said sit. The legs under her were not as steady as they had been at 28. Her back ached in the place between her shoulder blades, where one's back always ached after one had sat up 3 nights in a row, in a chair too short for a tall woman. The Duke watched her sit. "What is your name?" he said. "Marin Penhale. I told you on the first night. You may not remember." "I remember." She waited. "From Trewithen Cove." "Yes." "My sister had a midwife from Falmouth," he said. "I know." "She died anyway." "I know." He looked at the cradle by the fire. Lillian was awake. She had been awake since Hannah left. She was watching the ceiling beam with the unfocused considering of a 3-day-old who had decided not to scream just at present. The Duke watched the child for a long time. "My sister wrote me a letter," he said, "in the week she came home. I keep it in the second drawer of the desk in the library. She wrote that if anything should happen to her in her labour, I was to keep the child. You are keeping her." "I am on the floor of my sister's birthroom with my own bile on my chin." "You are sitting up in your sister's birthroom." He closed his eyes. He opened them. He said, "Will you stay?" "I have been staying." "Will you stay until I can walk?" "Yes." "And after?" She did not answer. He did not press her. He turned his head back to the cradle. "What is wrong with me?" he said. "I do not know." "You do?" "I have a suspicion. I will not say it until I am sure." "Say the suspicion." "No." She rose. She went for the water she had meant to go for. He thought, after she had gone, that she looked like none of the women who came to Tremaine. He could scarcely remember what those women looked like. For 2 years his eyes had passed over them as they passed over the maids who lit lamps. Eleanor had been at Tremaine, and he had looked at Eleanor. Now Eleanor was buried in the south aisle of St. Petrock's. The midwife had been below his sight too the first night. She had been a pair of hands, cold ones, with a low voice that said the same words over and over. "You are breathing. You are going to breathe. Drink." He had drunk because the voice told him to. He had asked no whos and gotten none. Now he had asked. Now he had a name. Marin Penhale of Trewithen Cove. He thought, the woman has not slept in 3 days. She has not slept, and she has not gone home. She has fed my niece and held my niece and changed my niece's linen. She has walked with my niece in the upper hall at 3 in the morning. I have heard her doing it. He thought, she will not say what is wrong with me because she is too good a woman to accuse a household without proof. He thought, she will find the proof. He closed his eyes again because the eyes had begun to burn. He was not strong enough yet to keep them open very long. He thought as he drifted. She stayed. The fourth day they ate together for the first time. He sat up in the chair by the window with a coverlet across his knees. Marin sat across from him with a tray between them, and broth and bread and a half-cup of weak wine. She had thinned the wine with hot water. She did not eat much herself. He noted this. "You do not drink the wine." "I never have." "Why?" "My husband drowned in March 5 years ago. I poured the wine that was in the house onto the ground at the back step because the smell of it broke me. The habit has held." He looked at her. "I had a husband called Thomas," she said. "He was a fisherman. He went out in a northeasterly because we needed the catch. The sea kept him. Our boy died of fever 6 weeks afterwards. He was 4 months old. His name was Daniel. I say his name seldom because there is no one to say it to." She picked up a spoon. "I have said it once today. That is enough." He did not speak for a long while. Then he said, "My sister was Eleanor. We were born 10 minutes apart. She was first. She married a man called Hale who was kind and a fool. He went down with a Falmouth packet between Lisbon and the Scillies a year ago this November. She came back to Tremaine carrying his child. She asked me to keep her here for the birth. I said yes. The physician I kept told me a Falmouth midwife would suffice. He told me my sister was strong. When the labour went long, he told me no further help was needed. He told me this for 30 hours. He let her die. I have not had him in the house since. I have not had the magistrate down either. I did not know whether I would survive him long enough to lay the case." Marin held the spoon over the broth. "Your Grace, Theron, I will not use your given name. Then call me nothing. I will call you Your Grace. As you like." She set the spoon down. "I think," she said, "that you have been given foxglove. I think you have been given laudanum on top of it. I think the cup you drink from has not been cleaned since the night your sister died." The room was very quiet. "By whom?" he said. "That I do not know." He looked at her for a long moment. "You will know," he said, "before I do." She rose. She took the cradle and the child from the hearth, and she carried them with her out of the chamber and into the dressing room next door. She came back without them. "From tonight," she said, "she sleeps where I sleep, and from tonight you drink only what I pour." He closed his eyes. He nodded. She turned to the window. The sea had calmed. Gulls were over it. The day was thin and bright. She stayed. Captain Crispin Ashford arrived at Tremaine House on the 5th morning in a hired chaise at 9:45. Marin saw the chaise from the upper window. She had been at the window because Lillian was at her shoulder, and Lillian quieted faster against a moving body. Marin had been walking the length of the sun-warmed boards from the hearth to the window and back. The chaise came up the drive at a brisk pace, with a single travelling trunk strapped behind. The man who got out wore a captain's coat and a hat with a gold-band cockade. He stepped down without waiting for the step to be let. He turned and surveyed the front of the house as a man might survey a property he was being shown by an agent. Marin moved back from the glass. She went to the Duke. He had been asleep. He woke when her hand touched his shoulder. "He is here," she said. "How does he look?" "Like a man who has had a fast journey." Your Grace." "Marin, do not let him sit at the foot of the bed. Make him stand. He thinks of himself sitting. I cannot stand. You can sit higher. Let me move the bolster." She moved the bolster. She straightened the coverlet. She drew the curtain to the hearth. She set the cup of clean water on the table at his right hand, and she set the candle behind his head, where the light would be at his back and on his brother's face. "There," she said, "you have done this before. I have been at deathbeds for the reading of wills. You expect a will to be read. I expect a petition. Sarah heard the word from the steward last night, an unsound-mind petition." His hand on the coverlet went white at the knuckles. He held himself still and silent. "You will be calm," Marin said. "You will be quiet. He will do the speaking. You will let him." "And you?" "I will not leave the room. He will tell me to leave the room. You will say, 'I do not leave the room.' You will say, 'I am the midwife at your niece's cradle, and I do not leave her side.'" And if he insists, he will not insist past the second time if you do not yield the first. The Duke nodded. There were footsteps in the hall. There was Sarah's voice, small and taut and polite. Then the door opened on a knock that did not wait for the answer. Captain Ashford was a fair man with his brother's bones and none of his brother's wear. He was perhaps 26. His coat was very well kept. His face was open and warm and concerned. He stopped in the middle of the carpet. His hand went to his heart. He said, "Theron," in a voice that was, almost, a brother's voice. "Crispin, I came as soon as your steward wrote. You took the road from Plymouth. I took the road through Truro. There is a packet from Plymouth that I could not get a passage on." "I thought there might be." The captain looked at Marin then, for the first time. His eyes were grey and not quite still. He smiled at her. He did not bow. "And this is—" "Mrs. Penhale," the Duke said, "the midwife at my niece's cradle." "From the village?" "From Trewithen Cove." "Ah, Mrs. Penhale, thank you for your service. You may leave us now. My brother and I have family business." Marin stayed where she stood. "Marin remains," the Duke said. "My niece is asleep in the next room. Marin will be at her side." "My dear man." "There is a wet nurse. There is the maid." "Marin remains." The captain looked at the Duke. His face held the same calm. He smiled again. He said, "As you wish, Theron. As you wish." He sat. He sat at the foot of the bed. Marin met the Duke's eye. The Duke moved his hand on the coverlet, a small gesture that asked her to let it stand. She let it stand. There was nothing to be gained by sending the captain to his feet now. The captain folded his hands. "Theron, I am not going to lie to you. You look like a corpse. I am told you have been on the floor of this room for 4 days. I am told the physician has been refused. I am told there is no one in the house but a maid and a stableman, and now this admirable woman from the Cove. I am told my sister's child is in a cradle on the hearth. Theron, this is no way for the head of our house to live. Eleanor died 9 days ago. I know it. I grieve with you. But Theron, you are not well. You are not in your right mind. Look at your hand. My hand is steady. It is steady today. It was not steady yesterday. The household reports, your own steward reports, that you have been in a delirium for the better part of a week. Theron, there is provision for this. There is provision in law. Lilian is the heir to the Hale property as well as a ward of your house. She cannot be left to a delirium, nor can the estate. What are you proposing, Crispin? I am proposing that I sit at your bedside until you are well. I will act in the matter of Lilian's guardianship until you are well. We will do this through the proper channels, with the magistrate's signature, for everybody's protection, including yours. A petition of guardianship. And, I'm sorry to say it, Theron, a finding of unsoundness for the period of the illness, to be revoked, of course, on your full recovery. And if I am not to recover, you are to recover. And if I am not, then God forbid. But the estate would not fall to the crown. It would not be tangled. Lilian would not be a ward of strangers. The captain leaned forward. He had a warm, almost embarrassed smile. Theron, I am your brother. I am only here because I am your brother. Let me sit at your hand. Let the steward write to Sir Howell and lay the matter before the parish. We will have you walking by Michaelmas. The Duke looked past his brother at the curtain. He said, Marin, open the curtain. Marin opened the curtain. The morning light came across the bed and across the captain's face and across the half-empty water cup on the table. The captain's eyes flicked once to the water cup. They came back. The Duke said, Sir Howell may come on Friday. Theron, Sir Howell may come on Friday. The hearing may be in the vestry where my sister was buried. Bring whom you please. Bring Mr. Pemberton from the village if you choose. Bring my steward. Bring the vicar. I will have my own witnesses there. I'm not in a delirium today, Crispin. I'm sitting up. I'm eating. I'm drinking from cups poured by Mrs. Penhale. I have a niece in the next room who is being fed by Hannah Trezessa of the Cove, and who has been held this morning by Mrs. Penhale, and who is alive and at the breast, and not by any provision of yours. On Friday in the vestry, I will say so. Theron, listen to yourself. Friday. The captain rose. His face had gone, just for a moment, the colour of skim milk. Then the colour came back, and the smile came back with it. He bowed to the Duke. He bowed to Marin, a precise civil bow that was meant to be noticed. He said at the door, I will see myself out. Mrs. Penhale, a pleasure. He went. Marin shut the door behind him. She turned to the Duke. The Duke said, he will be back before Friday. Yes. He will have something else by then. Yes. I should marry you, he said, before he comes back. She did not look away. For the protection, he said. I know. I release you after, if you wish it. I know. Marin? Friday morning, she said. Before the hearing. We marry at the vestry. Sir Howell signs. I keep the child. You keep the title. We see what comes. She stayed. The night between Wednesday and Thursday, Marin did not sleep at all. She had slept in snatches the 4 nights before. She had slept on the cot Sarah had dragged into the dressing-room. She had slept at the chair by the Duke's bed. Once she had slept with her head on her own folded arm at the cradle's edge. None of those had been more than 2 hours together. She had not minded. She had been a midwife 11 years. She did not need much sleep when the work was at her hand. But this night was different. This night she was not at work. By a paper that lay folded under the candlestick on the dressing-table, she was going to be a duchess by special licence at 8:30 in the morning. After the wedding, there was a hearing at 10. After the hearing, there was whatever Friday afternoon would be. There was no work to do at this hour. The Duke was sleeping. The child was sleeping. The house was sleeping. The wind had dropped and the sea was quiet. Marin sat at the window of the dressing-room. The candle was low. The clock at the foot of the stairs struck 2. She thought of Thomas. She had not thought of him steadily for 2 years. She had thought of him in glances and in sudden lurches. A certain weather rose over the cliff, or she came up the path at dusk and saw a lamp lit at someone else's window and not at hers. She did not, she had told herself often, grieve every day. She thought of him on his days. She let him be on the rest. But tonight he came to her plain, the way he had said her name on the steps that last morning, the pilchards he had eaten before he went out for the catch, and Daniel, 4 months old at his death, whose name she had not said to anybody in 3.5 years, until she had given it that morning to a duke across a broth tray. She thought, I have said his name. I have given it to a stranger. She thought, the stranger is to be my husband by 10 o'clock tomorrow. She thought, no, he is not a stranger. He has been my patient for 5 days. He has known my hand at his throat and at the back of his neck and at his wrist. I have known the rate of his breathing in the dark for 4 nights running. I have heard him say Eleanor in the kind of voice that one does not use for one's own sister, unless one is at the bottom of something. She thought, this is not a stranger. This is also not a marriage. She thought, it does not need to be a marriage. It needs to be a paper. Tomorrow, it needs to be a paper. A door opened in the corridor. She knew at once which door. She knew his step before he was 3 paces along the boards. He moved very slowly still. He had walked the length of the upper hall once that day, and once the day before. He had told her he meant to be on his feet when his brother came back. She stayed where she was. The candle was low, her hair was down her back, and her face was wet at the cheek without her having known. She let it stay wet and watched the door. He came to the door. He did not come in. Marin, he said, Your Grace. It is 2. You should sleep. I cannot. No. He stood at the door. He had a coat thrown over his nightshirt. His feet were bare on the boards. He looked at her face. Are you afraid? He said. No. Are you sure? I'm not afraid of the morning. I'm afraid of what comes after the morning. I'm afraid of a kindness I will have to repay and cannot. There is no kindness to repay. There is. There is a name. There is a roof. There is Lillian. There is a child I will love. I love her already. By the morning I will be her aunt by law. By the year I will be her mother in fact, because that is how it will go, and we both know it. That is the kindness. That is what I cannot repay. Marin, there is no debt. There will be a debt. There always is between people such as we are. You will not see it. I will. I have not been a duchess. I do not know how. I will not know how. I will know whose hand to wash and whose linen to change, and which way the wind takes off the headland. I will know how to set bones and how to deliver a child. I will not know how to be in the room with women who have been bred to dinners since they were 6. I am telling you so that you know, so that on Sunday, and on the Sunday after, and on the Sunday after that, you remember that I told you, in this room, in the dark. He let it stand a long moment. She turned her face back to the window. The sea was a black plain. The moon was still below the line of it. Marin, Your Grace, I sent for you. I know, Sarah told me. I did not send for the physician. I sent for the midwife. I sent for the widow Penhale. I asked Sarah in the morning of the day I went down, whose hands I wanted at my niece. She said, the widow Penhale at Trewithen Cove. I said, send for her at first sign. Sarah was to send for you whether I was alive to ask for it again or not. I had her swear to it. I had been ill 3 days by then. I knew. I had not the proof. I had the knowing. I sent for you. She turned back to him. Why? Because Mistress Tressis's daughter had said your name at the market last autumn. Because the vicar's wife had said your name in October at the harvest. Because my sister had said your name. My sister had said it to me when she came home. She said, I will not have the Falmouth midwife if I can have the Penhale woman. I said, I will see. I did not see. I let the physician have his way. I let her die. His voice had not gone up. His voice did not go up. He spoke each sentence flat against the boards. I sent for you because I should have sent for you 9 days earlier. He stopped. He set his hand on the doorframe to steady himself. That, he said, is the debt. That is mine. I will not let you have it. Marin rose. She crossed the room. She stood at the doorframe across from him with the candle between them, low and yellow on her face and on his. You have not asked me, she said, if I will marry you. No. Why have you not asked? Because if you said no, I would not have any other plan. She put her hand to his face. She set it flat to his cheek, the way she had set it to his head on the floor the first night, when his breath had begun to even. She held the silence with it. He let her hand stay. I will marry you, she said. Yes. She took her hand away. Now go and sleep. We have a hearing in the morning. He did not move at once. He said, You stayed. Yes. He went. She blew out the candle. Sleep stayed away. She lay down on the cot in the dressing-room with Lillian beside her in the cradle, watched the light come up out of the sea and thought, He sent for me. He sent for me on the first day. I stayed not by choice, but because I was already chosen. It was not unwelcome. Sarah came to the dressing-room at 4:30. Marin had slept perhaps an hour. She had laid down and let the breathing of the child beside her even her own. She had drifted twice. She came up the second time when Sarah's hand at the door turned the latch. Mrs. Penhale? What? Yelland. Where? He is below in the steward's room. He has been writing letters since 2 o'clock. I went down for water. He has Mrs. Penhale. He has my journal. Marin sat up. Which journal? The one I keep at the press. The one with the dates. You said it was hidden. It was. He has it. He came up the back stair while we were at dinner. He has it now on the desk in his room. He is reading it. There is a candle. The candle is at the desk. Marin was on her feet. She was at the wash basin. She was at her boots. How long since you saw him? 4 minutes. He has not left the room. No. Will he? I do not know. He has put the journal in his coat. The coat is on the chair. Marin tied her boots. She put her shawl over her nightdress. She put her cloak over the shawl. Sarah. Yes. Take Lillian to the Duke's room. Lay her in his arm. Tell him I am gone to Pemberton. Tell him I will be back by 7. Tell him to keep her in his arm until I am back. Tell him not to send anybody after me. Mrs. Penhale, go. Mrs. Penhale, you cannot. Sarah, the steward will burn that journal in his grate before sunrise. He will write a new one between now and the hearing if he is left to it. Mr. Pemberton has the other paper. The captain has charged the Foxglove and the laudanum to his own account at Pemberton's. Pemberton has the logbook. The captain will not have thought of it yet. The captain is at the inn at Tremaine Village asleep at this hour. The captain has been writing his unsound mind petition all of yesterday and last night, and has not yet gone to Pemberton. If I am at Pemberton's by 6, I have the logbook before the captain has it. If I am not, I have nothing but my word. My word is the word of a midwife from the cove. She was at the door. And Sarah? Yes. What is in the journal, exactly? Every cup, every dose, every date, every signature where I drew the laudanum from the press. I signed for what Yellen told me to draw. I am in the journal too. I will hang with him. You will not hang. You came to me. The hearing will know you came to me. Go now. She went down the back stair. The house at 5 in the morning was cold and lightless. The hall clock struck the half. Marin made the kitchen without being seen. The back door was bolted but not chained. She drew the bolt and let herself out into the kitchen garden, and she crossed the wet grass, and she came onto the gravel of the drive. She did not look back. She had 4 miles to walk. She had 2 hours. The cliff path had been 3.5 years gone from her feet. She came to it at the gate by the orchard. The gate was open. She closed it behind her. She put her left hand on the wall and her right on the latch. She stepped through. She set her foot on the path her husband had taken on the morning he had not come back. A thin grey easterly came up off the rocks, salt-smelling and cold. The path lay as a chalk line under her feet, known by foot from 500 crossings, untouched by her for 3.5 years. She walked. She kept her mind off Thomas and on Mr. Pemberton's logbook. She thought of the captain's name and the captain's account and the captain's signature. She thought of the dates Sarah had given her over the past 5 days. The 15th of October, 20 drops. The 16th, 30. The 17th, the day before her arrival, 60. She thought of foxglove leaves at 24 grains and laudanum at the same hand. She thought of Mr. Pemberton's wife, who would be in the back kitchen at 6, and who would open the door because the village knew her hand. Thomas she kept off. She walked 1/2 mile and the path bent down toward the cove. She felt under her foot the loose chip of slate that had been loose since she had been a wife. She stopped. Here, she thought, here is where I told him to be careful. Here is where I kissed him on the mouth that last morning. Here is where he laughed and went on. She put her hand on the stone wall to her left. The stone was cold and wet. She bent her head against the back of her own hand. She let the cold come through her glove. No tears came. None had come for Thomas in 2 years, and none came now. She thought, plainly, the way she thought when she was working. He died. He died on a Tuesday. He died at the bottom of a northeasterly. He has been gone a long time. He can do nothing for what I am walking to, and nothing against what I am walking from. He is at the bottom of the sea, and the sea is a long way off. I am a midwife on an errand for a duke and his sister's daughter, and I am going to Mr. Pemberton's by 6. She straightened. She walked on. She walked the 1.25 miles to the gate at Trewithen. She came up the lane to the apothecary at the bottom of the high street. She went round to the kitchen door. Mrs. Pemberton opened the door at the second tap. She had a candle in her hand. Her cap was on crooked. She had been at the fire. Marin, God's sake, what? I need John. Now. I need the purchase book for Tremaine. I need the page for Ashford. Marin. Now, Susan. Mrs. Pemberton looked at her face. She turned. She called up the back stair. She put Marin in the chair by the fire and put a cup of tea in her hand without asking and went up. Mr. Pemberton came down in a coat over his nightshirt. His glasses were on his nose. He was 61. He had been the village apothecary since he was 30. He had been Marin's father's friend. He sat at the kitchen table. He opened the cupboard. He took down the purchase book. "What page, child?" "Captain Crispin Ashford, the account at Tremaine." He turned the pages. He found it. He looked. Christ in heaven. "What is there?" "Foxglove, foxglove, foxglove. 2 ounces of laudanum on the 3rd, 3 on the 5th, 4 on the 9th, all to the captain, all signed for by Yelland." Marin set her tea down. "I need the book. I need it at the vestry at 10. "You shall have it. I will come myself. I will swear to it. The captain has not been to me. He sent the steward. The steward took the pencil out of my hand and signed for it himself. The captain has not stood once at this counter since the spring. That is what I needed to know." She rose. The dawn was beginning at the kitchen window. The sky over the high street was a soft white. The first cart was at the bottom of the lane. "I must go back. Marin, sit, eat. The cart will take you to the gate. There is a child at the house. I told the Duke I would be back by 7. The cart will be at the gate in 20 minutes. You will be back by 7. Sit." She sat. She drank the tea. She ate a piece of bread because she had not eaten in 18 hours, and because Mr. Pemberton put it in her hand. She did not speak much. Mrs. Pemberton wrapped a second slice in a cloth and put it in her pocket without speaking. At the lane, with the cart waiting, and Mr. Pemberton's book in a kerchief under her cloak, she turned to the apothecary. "John, if today does not go as I think it will go, see that the Duke's niece is not given to Crispin Ashford. See it any way you can." "It will go as you think." "Marin, look at me." She looked. "You have done this before. You have been at worse. Go." She got into the cart. The driver, an old fisherman she had known since she was a girl, did not ask her business. He clicked at the horse. The cart went up the high street and turned for the cliff road. Marin watched the sea brighten. She held the book against her ribs under the cloak. She thought, "If I can hold this until 10, it is enough." She thought, it would have to be enough. They were married at 8:30 in the vestry of St. Petrock's by the Reverend Mr. Trelawney. Marin wore the dress she had left her cottage in 5 mornings ago. The vicar had brought a posy of late asters from the parsonage garden, and put it in her hand without comment. The Duke wore black. He stood without leaning. He had ridden the 4 miles in the closed carriage. He had walked from the carriage to the vestry door on Marin's arm. He had let her arm go at the door because he would not be seen propped at his own wedding. Sir Howell witnessed. Mr. Pemberton witnessed. Sarah Penrose witnessed. The clerk wrote. The vows took perhaps 4 minutes. The Duke spoke them in a clear, dry voice. Marin spoke them in the voice she used at births when she needed the women in the room to hear her. That voice was not loud, but it was difficult to interrupt. The vicar shut the book. "You may kiss your wife, your grace." The Duke turned to Marin. He looked at her. He set his hand to her cheek the way she had set her hand to his cheek in the doorway at 2 in the morning. He bent. He kissed her once on the mouth. It was a brief, dry, deliberate thing, a paper kiss, a promise made to a witness, and underneath it was the kiss of a man who had decided. She felt the decision in his hand. She let it stand. He drew back. "My wife," he said. The clerk wrote that down too. Sir Howell coughed. "Your Grace, the hearing is at 10. We have an hour." "Then let us be seated." He sat. Marin sat. The vicar offered tea and Sir Howell took it. Sarah laid out the journal on the table by the Duke's right hand. Mr. Pemberton laid out his logbook. Marin laid Lillian, who had been at her shoulder since the cart had brought her up the drive, in the crook of the Duke's arm. The Duke looked down at his niece. He said quietly to Marin, "I have not held her yet." "You are holding her?" "Yes." He did not lift his eyes from the child's face for a long while. At 10 the captain came. He came with 2 men in coats and 1 in a clerk's gown. He had a folder under his arm. He had a smile. He stopped 4 paces inside the vestry door and looked at the room. The smile thinned and went on. "Theron. Crispin. Sir Howell, I bring the petition. I bring also Dr. Hennessy of Truro, who has examined the steward's correspondence and is prepared to confirm." "Captain Ashford," said Sir Howell, "take a seat. Lay your papers. We shall hear you presently. We have other business first." "Other business?" The Duke wishes to put a deposition before the bench. He has the right. Let him speak." The captain looked at his brother. He looked at the child in his brother's arm. He looked last at Marin, sitting at his brother's elbow in her grey dress with the posy at her wrist. He said slowly, "May I ask who this woman is?" "You may," said the Duke. "She is Her Grace the Duchess of Tremaine. We were married in this vestry an hour and a half ago. The clerk has the entry. Sir Howell witnessed." The captain did not move. The vestry was very quiet. The captain said, "I see." "You will see further presently," said the Duke. "Sir Howell, may I?" "You may, Your Grace." The Duke shifted Lillian to his left arm. He took up the journal from the table. He set it open at the first page. He set Mr. Pemberton's logbook beside it open at the page for the Ashford account. He nodded at Sarah. She stood. "This is Sarah Penrose," he said. "Apothecary maid at Tremaine House. She has kept a daily journal of every cup she has poured for me since the day my sister fell into labour. She has signed in her own hand at the foot of every entry. She is here today by her own will. She is here without coercion. She has my pardon for what she did, on condition of telling the bench all of it." He turned to Mr. Pemberton. "This is John Pemberton, apothecary of Trewithen Cove. He keeps the account of every purchase against Tremaine House. The account names the purchaser. The account names the substance. The account names the date. The account does not lie." Sir Howell took the books in turn. He read. He read slowly. He had spectacles. He turned the pages. He read a long time. The captain stood through it. He did not sit. His hand was at his hip on the hilt of his dress sword, and the hand was white at the knuckles. The Duke watched. He watched the woman who had crouched at his throat on a stone floor in a storm. He watched her sit perfectly still at his elbow, with his sister's daughter between them on the table. He thought, "She has not flinched once since the night this began." He thought, "No man in this room has ever shown me what she has shown me." He did not say it. He let his eyes go back to his brother. When Sir Howell looked up, his face was the colour of cold pewter. "Captain Ashford." "Sir, you are charged on this account by this book with the purchase of foxglove and laudanum at Mr. Pemberton's establishment over a period of 19 days, in sums and at intervals consistent with the dosing of a grown man toward—" Sir Howell paused. "Toward an end. Captain, have you anything to say?" "I have not been to Mr. Pemberton's establishment." "Mr. Pemberton is here. He says you have not. He says the steward came in your name." "The steward came in my name?" "On your account, with your signature. Captain, is this your signature?" He turned the book. The captain looked. The captain looked a long time at the page. Then he said, "It is." He said it because the signature was his, and because Mr. Pemberton had 4 other men in the village who could swear to it, and because the captain was a soldier before he was anything else. He said it flat, with his eyes still on the page. "Sir Howell," he said, "these books, I require an opportunity to examine them. With counsel. The accusation is grave." "The accusation has not been laid, Captain. You have made it for yourself." The captain's mouth opened. The captain's mouth shut. Marin stood up. She had meant to let the Duke speak. She had meant to be silent, because she was a midwife from the Cove, and the men in this room were the men of the law. She stood anyway. The child in the Duke's arm made a small sound and was still. No one in the room moved to stop her. She set her hands on the table. She looked at the captain across the books. "Captain Ashford. Madam, 3 nights I poured the water that kept his grace alive. You poured the foxglove." The captain stood as a man cut at the legs. She said, "The court can decide whose hands belong on the child." She sat down. The vestry held. Sarah at the wall was crying without sound. Mr. Pemberton was looking at his hands. The vicar was looking at Marin. Sir Howell was looking at the captain. The captain said, very quietly, "Theron." The Duke held his silence. The captain put his hand to his face. He said, "I will not contest the guardianship." "You will not," said Sir Howell. Contest a great many things, Captain. Constables are at the door. You will go with them. There will be a magistrate's hearing on Monday at Truro, and an indictment laid at the quarter sessions. You will not return to Tremaine House. You will not write to it. You will not be at any place within 5 miles of the Duke's seat or the child's person without my warrant. Do you understand? I understand. Take him. The constables came. The captain looked once at his brother. The Duke looked back at him steady. The captain went. The vestry door closed. Sir Howell sat down. Marin reached for Lillian. The Duke set the child in her arm without speaking. He did not lift his head from his hand for a long minute. Then he lifted his head, and he looked at his wife with the child at her shoulder, and he said, in the voice he had spoken with on the floor on the first night, "You stayed." She said, "Yes." 18 months passed. There was a wedding board for the new Duchess at Tremaine the spring after the hearing. Sir Howell had said one was wanted. The Duke had said, "Let the village come." The village had come. Fisherman, the parson, the schoolmaster, Hannah Trezise, and her 4, Mr. Pemberton and his wife. They had drunk small beer in the long hall and eaten roast mutton. They had looked at the new lady of the house with the kind of plain country attention that did not, in the end, settle a question one way or another. Marin had stood it. She had stood it because she had said she would stand it. The Duke had stood at her elbow through the worst of it. At the end of the night he had said, "You did well." She had said, "I did not faint." He had said, "That is the same thing for these people." She had laughed for the first time in the house. Now it was June again, the 2nd June. The orchard at Tremaine was in its long late leaf. The apples were forming on the trees by the south wall. There was a child at one end of the rough lawn and her uncle at the other. Her aunt by law, who was also her aunt by blood of the mother's asking, sat in a chair under the tree. Lillian was 16 months. Lillian was walking. Lillian had been walking for 2 weeks, but she had not walked yet from one person to another across open ground. Marin had a child of her own at her shoulder. He was 3 weeks old. His name was Daniel Theron Ashford. He was sleeping. He was, Marin had been told by Hannah Trezise the morning of his birth, the heaviest child Hannah had ever caught. Hannah had caught him at 4:20 in the morning in the great chamber of Tremaine House. Marin's instructions had been in her ear, and Marin's hand in her own at the worst of it. The Duke had been at the foot of the stairs because Marin would not have him in the room. The Duke had come in at the first cry. He had stood at the door. He had looked at his wife and at his son. He had said nothing for a long while. Then he had said, "Daniel?" because Marin had told him the name months before, and he had said it as if he were keeping a promise. The orchard was warm. The sun was in the southwest and was coming through the leaves in pieces. The Duke had set Lillian on her feet at his end of the lawn. He was crouched on his heels. He held out his hands. "Lillian," he said, "walk to your aunt." Lillian considered. Lillian was a serious child, and she had her uncle's mouth. "Lillian." Lillian took a step. She took another. She took a third, which was the third she had ever taken on her own without something to hold. She swayed. She did not fall. She came on. 5 steps. 6. 8. She crossed the warm grass with the wobble of a child who had decided to do a thing and would not be told otherwise. Halfway down the lawn she paused. She looked at Marin under the tree. She looked back at her uncle. "Go on," the Duke said. "Go on." She went on. She came the rest of the way at a kind of trot. At the chair she fell against Marin's knee and she laughed, the loud open laugh of a child who has done a clever thing. Marin laughed too, careful of the baby at her shoulder. She set her free hand to the child's back and she said, "There, that is the orchard crossed." The Duke was on his feet at the other end. He had stood up too fast. He set his hand on the trunk of the tree at his elbow. He was 30 and some now, and the year had been a slow year for his wind. He came down the lawn at his own pace. He came to his wife. He laid his hand on his niece's head, and his other on his son's. He said, "Both at once." "Both at once," she said. He sat on the bench by the chair. They were quiet for a while. After a while he said, "I have spoken to the new steward about the cliff path. He said the gate is to be mended by Lammas." "Yes." "You said you would walk it again. In June. You told me at Easter. I did. It is June. It is. He looked at her sideways. Now? Soon. With me? No. Alone the first time. You may meet me at the gate at the orchard. Marin. Theron. He did not press her. He never pressed her. She rose. She set their son into the cradle she had carried out under the tree at the start of the afternoon. She set Lillian on the Duke's knee. She kissed her husband once on the mouth, a slow, careful kiss, the kiss of a woman 30 years old who knew her work, and she set off across the orchard for the gate that gave onto the cliff path. The day was bright. The sea was the colour the sea was in June. The wind was a soft easterly. The gate was open. She stepped through. She walked 1/2 mile and she came to the place where the path bent down toward the cove. She came to the loose chip of slate that had been loose since she was a wife. She stopped. She set her hand to the stone wall to her left. She said aloud, because there was no one to hear, "Thomas, I have walked it. I have a husband who did not drown. I have a son. I have a niece who is not mine and is mine. I have a cottage at Trewithen still, and the door is on the latch and the hearth is laid. I am going to walk back to the orchard now. I am not going to walk this path with my back to it any more. I am going to walk it. Goodbye." She did not cry. She turned. She walked back. At the orchard gate the Duke was waiting. He had Daniel at his shoulder, Lillian on his hand, and the courtesy to wait without asking. "Well," he said. "Well. Come." She came. She took her son back into her arm. She took her husband's offered hand. She crossed the orchard with him toward the house, where the lamps were being lit in the long hall against the evening, and where the hearth in the great chamber was laid against the cool of the night that came in off the sea even in June. A niece of 16 months and a son of 3 weeks would be put down to sleep in 2 cribs side by side, because Marin would have it no other way. The carriage wheels of a guest came up the drive somewhere ahead. The Duke looked and kept walking, and kept her hand in his. She thought, "The carriage came for me once in the rain. It comes for him now in the sun. It is the same wheel. It is not the same road." She walked on. She did not stay because she had been asked. She stayed because she had chosen.